You know, with the literally hundreds of carburetor-related videos we've done on this channel over the last 7 years, I can't believe we missed this one. And it's such a common problem. This is the bog, right? This is the off the starting line hard acceleration bog that you can't tune your way out of. Now, this isn't the same as an off idle stumble, bog, hesitation, or stall. That's usually related to the accelerator pump. This is different. In this situation, car runs right, everything's good, perfect throttle response, you rev it, wham, she's right there, okay? But then you pull to the starting line, right? Well, you know, you're getting ready to go from the dig, you flat punch it, it hits good, it hits hard, and then all of a sudden, she just nosedives and then comes back up and runs clean the rest of the way through. And no matter what you try, you can't get rid of this bog. All right, so the thing that made me think of this was a video clip that I came across the other day. And it was an unusual perspective. So this was taken from the windshield area of a car, right, on the starting line. So the car has a supercharged engine in it with a pair of Holley carburetors on top. So the car leaves the starting line, okay, and it's a good hard pull, and then all of a sudden, just whoa, she noses over and falls flat on her face. Now in the video, you see that there's a fountain of fuel that just comes pouring out of the bowl vents. So you couldn't believe this much fuel is going to come out of the bowl vents. But it's a unique perspective, because how often do you actually see the top of your carburetor when you're under hard acceleration? It's usually under an air cleaner or under the hood, it's under a scoop. You never actually see the top of the carburetor. In this situation, you see it and you see what's happening exactly. Fuel is being forced, under G-force, fuel is being forced backwards towards the bowl vent and up and out and creating that fountain. So, I mean, carburetors, as brutally simple as carburetors are, and they really are, they're subject to some weirdnesses, mostly because they have a free-floating fluid. The gasoline just kind of free floats inside of it. So it's subject to G-forces. Forward, you know, acceleration, deceleration, side to side, the fuel sloshes around. But because it sloshes around, it can create some unique situations. Fuel injection is different. The fuel is captured, it's pressurized, and it doesn't matter acceleration or deceleration. But with a carburetor, it's a problem. And you know, once you work through all of these little bugs, that's when the magic of carburation really shows its, you know, getting ahead of myself. So this is a problem, this is a situation that's mostly limited to Holley carburetors and the design of Holley carburetors. You won't find this on Carter, Edelbrock styles. There may be other types, Webers or whatever, okay, exotic carburation that may have similar situations. But for our intents and purposes, it's really limited to Holley carburetors and the way they're designed to vent their bowls, their flow bowls. So, you know, before fuel can be allowed to flow freely through the circuitry and through the boosters, it has to have air to displace it. And that air to displace it is coming through these tubes, okay? Now, and this is important, I gotta make this distinction right now, not all Holley carburetors are created equal. And what I'm gonna show you here is all principle, but you're gonna have to pinpoint exactly what the situation is on your particular carburetor, because the variations are countless. But on this carburetor, in this carburetor, we have vent tubes that are pressed into the body. On some of these, there is no vent tube. You'll just see the vent hole, okay, and it'll be like undercut a little bit right here, like right here, okay? It'll be undercut a bit and there won't be a tube. So you have to determine what's what. If you have this style, you're gonna have to add a tube to it by whatever means. But this is just like simple 1/4-inch tubing. So at any rate, Under acceleration, the fuel is sitting in the bowl. Some of it all of it gets forced back, and some of it gets forced up. And the fuel that gets forced up has no place to go except out the top, and then engine vacuum pulling here is just going to suck it right in. And you get this bog, okay? Now, this would be pretty easy to pinpoint if you've got an air fuel gauge on the car, because you'll see it goes temporary ultra super fat. But most people don't have it, and if you just tune it by the seat of your pants, you have to just go by the feel. And it'll always be, okay, good throttle response, you whack it, she jumps, and it goes, and then comes right back up again. So there's your symptom. So fuel gets forced back under acceleration and up through this vent into the carburetor. Now, Holley does have a couple of fixes for this that are built into some of their carburetors. Now, again, like I said, this is why I can't be specific, because you never know what combination of things you're going to find. On some of these center hung float bowl carburetors, all right? So in other words, here, this is center hung float. So you've got the float adjustment in the center, and this is a side hung float. So you see you've got the adjustment off to the side, and you see there's a very big difference in size between the center hung and the side hung float bowl. Putting them next to each other for comparison's sake. Okay. Now, on some of these center hung float bowls, carburetors are intended for high performance use. You're going to find a baffle right here. Okay, and this baffle, so this is a center hung float. This baffle fits in here like this, and it prevents most of the fuel in the bowl from finding its way through that passage and then up through the vent tube. But this is not on all of them, right? You'll find it on some, but not all. If you don't have one, if you crack your bowl off, your float bowl off, and you don't find one of these, install one. But this is not the end-all, be-all. That baffle is good for the vast majority of fuel that's going to get thrown back. But remember, as the engine, as the car is accelerating, fuel is being let in through the inlet, through the needle and seat to replenish the fuel that's being forced through the jets, or sucked through the jets, I should say. And so there's all kinds of like situations happening inside the float bowl. There's gasoline, there's fuel just sloshing around and doing all sorts of crazy things. So while a baffle like that will prevent a fountain, it won't prevent some fuel. And that some fuel may not give you a necessarily crazy fall on its face bog, but it will hold the car back. And again, like you can pull the plugs and make a run. Afterwards, you pull the plugs and they come out nice and you clean. Like, what is going on here with this thing? It's because it's not putting enough fuel through to like make it fall on its face, but just enough to like just dirty it up and slow it down a little bit, momentarily off the starting line. So that's your one situation there. On these side hung floats, there is no room in the bowl to accept that kind of baffle. So these now I just cracked this carburetor open to see if it had one in there, and it doesn't. So some of these will have an odd shaped baffle that sits kind of flush alongside the top of the metering block, and it's kind of cut on an angle like this. It's plastic, and it fits over these two little nubs, and that'll prevent the lion's share of fuel from heading its way up this vent tube. So this one didn't have it. This should be a high-performance carburetor. It's a manual choke carb, and I was expecting to find one of those baffles in there, but it's not. And like I said, this is cracked over for the first time. You can see it's got a stock gasket on it. Now, without any sort of baffling, fuel that's standing up against the metering plate, no choice but to go up and over. So you got some simple fixes for this. You got some simple fixes. One of them is you're going to find on carburetors that are designed for rock crawlers, like off-road guys, because those guys experience all kinds of splash and all kinds of situations. Those carburetors will have a tube that will join the two vent tubes. So it'll just run over the top like this, come like this, and then come back down, and it'll have like holes in the top of it. So that while fuel will splash and find its way going up into the vent, it won't come all the way. And that covers the front and the back vent tubes. Now the back vent tube is a problem also because on deceleration, this fuel heads this way and will overflow. So if you notice that on a hard stop, I know it happened a lot of times, like you do a burnout, after the burnout, you hit the brakes hard and the car will just go and die on you. Well, it's because the fuel is sloshing on the secondary side and overflowing the vent. So like I said, off-road designed carburetors will have a tube that's like permanently, attached here. Now, a quick fix for something like this, if you suspect it, is to take a piece of 1/4-inch tubing or 1/4-inch fuel line like this, okay? And you slip it over the tube. Hang on. Slip it over the tube like this. Okay. And you cut a little hole in the center like this. Now this is. I only did this for demonstration purposes real quick. This is just an old piece of, it's a dried out piece of fuel line. So, excuse the crack there. But that's a very common way of correcting that problem. So the fuel can come up, but it's probably not going to come all the way up this way, and vice versa. So that's one way to fix it. The downside to this is that fuel can be sucked through this opening, because remember now, wide open throttle, you got all of the motor pulling all, right here, okay? So this is going to be subject to a low pressure area, and it is possible for it to pull some fuel out of that. I'll show you one of the ways I like to do it. So here we've got a pair of spark plug wire boots, right? So it's just simple plug wire boots, and we fit them over the top now. And as the car is accelerating, fuel wants to come back this way. It comes up the vent tube, but it's not going to go forward. Acceleration is pushing everything backwards. So this is just these 90-degree boots over the tubes is a just very simple, straightforward, easy fix for that. That'll work just fine, providing you've got the room for it. It depends on the type of air cleaner that you use. So those are two possible fixes. Boots, 90-degree boots like that, or a piece of rubber hose over the top of the carburetor like that, joining the two vent tubes. I know, right? There's a bunch of you guys that are watching this video that are going like the light bulb just went off in your head, like, that's what happens. That's exactly what my car does. I hate it. And it goes, oh, and then it comes back up again. And you play with timing, and you play with accelerator pump shot. You play with all these different things, and it never seems to go away. Well, there you go. That's what you got. All right, really simple stuff with like an even simpler and cheaper, easy fix. I hope you got something out of that. Wait till the next carburetor surprise hits me. I cannot believe I never talked about that. I'll see you tomorrow.